Passion Harvest. Welcome and thank you for joining us at Passion Harvest, where we aim to inspire you to live a passionate life. My guest today is Max Igan. He's a bit of a legend in conspiracy theories, secrets, and so much more. His website is the Crow House, but of course, I will put all his details in the show notes. You are in for a treat. Buckle your seatbelts and get ready for the incredible world of Max Igan. Here he is. Welcome to the show, Max.
Thank you for having me on, darling. That's an interesting introduction. We'll see where we go from that.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. I was just saying to Max before, it's very hard to find anything about him because he's got a wonderful website, but there's nothing about you. So I guess since this is also a show about passion, I'd like to ask you, how did you get involved in all the incredible material that you produce? Big question.
I just sort of started doing it because it needed to be done, really. When I first started doing this, I mean, I didn't even put my face out there. I just was the voice. I didn't want anyone to even know what I looked like. I just thought I'll put it out there and say stuff because, you know, I was hearing people saying things, but they seemed to have an agenda or they wanted to sell books. They wanted to do this or do that, you know. I just thought I'd cut through it all and just tell it like it is and you know, no stake in the outcome. So, you know, I started doing it about 10 or 12 years ago, full time. I didn't think anyone would listen, but they did. So here I am. It's been an interesting ride. But, I mean, it's a bit of an enigma, I think, for a lot of people because, like I said, I don't have anything for sale. You can't find anything about me because I've never written a bio for myself or anything. I mean, I'd feel really weird writing a story about myself. It's a strange thing. I don't know how people do that. Write these big promos about themselves. So
Yeah,
I
it's
just kind of,
confronting.
I mean, well, yeah, I mean, and as well, I mean, I want people to know that I'm just a guy in a shed like everybody else. I'm not anybody special. That's the point of the whole thing is that you don't have to be special. You don't have to be someone special to make a difference. You just got to be prepared to speak out. So that's kind of why I do it in the way I do, I guess.
I love that I'm just a
If it
guy in a
makes
shed.
Well, yeah, you know, I mean, I think people tend to put you up on a bit of a pedestal and they see you as a leader or something, and then they kind of I think they can sit back and hold your coat and you're going to change the world for them. And I'll get the newsletter to say that Max has done all this stuff. And really what it's about is encouraging people to remember who and what they are and the fact that they have a voice and they can ask questions and they can speak out. And we don't actually have to do it. We're told so readily. We don't have to roll over on command. We could ask why. You know, and I think that's the big problem is that too many people simply roll over on command and don't ask why. And I think it's important for people to see that I'm just an everyday normal person. I'm not a leader. I'm not anything special. I didn't even finish high school. So, you know, it's not about any of that. It's just about being prepared to you know, have some value. Realize that you have value. Everybody has value. We don't have to do what we're told by these parasites that are running the world into the ground, you know. And it's our compliance with their wishes all the time and our tolerance of wrong behavior through fear of punishment that allows this whole system to perpetuate and to go in the direction that it's going. So, you know, I just try to encourage people to remember who and what they are, Donald. I think that's the key to the whole thing, you know. And if they think I'm someone special, well, you know, it's kind of, they sit back in awe, you know, and that's not what it's about, you know. They need to be in awe of themselves because we're all very, very powerful. We just choose not to be because we're usually cowed and scared and trained to think that way.
Look, I think that's such a beautiful message, but I do have to disagree. I think you are a bit of a thought leader and an inspiration for the average guy in a shed. You've actually, I call it the passion principle, but you've actually got off your ass and started doing something and speaking your mind and inspiring a lot of people. And that's a wonderful trait.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm glad for that. I'm glad that it has inspired a lot of people. I do get a lot of emails from people that say you've changed my life, you've changed the way I think, and blah blah blah. And that's really good. That's really gratifying to know that it does help.
Mhm.
Maybe a bit of a thought leader, but I think I mean, not really. I think a lot of people, so many people contact me and say everything you say on the radio show is all the stuff that I think. but I wasn't sure. I didn't know that I thought it until you said it. So it's kind of just encouraging people to remember. I think a lot of people think the things that I think, and they want to say it, they're just not prepared to, and they're scared to. So I'm trying to show them that you don't need to be scared to. You can just do it, and you might touch someone, you might make a difference. So maybe a leader in that respect, in as much as I'm prepared to speak, I don't have any fear of the outcome of speaking. But I think anybody can do what I do. I mean, even when you listen to the shows, I'm very careful not to over intellectualize anything. You never have to pick up a dictionary to listen to my shows.
Mm.
It's all very much around the kitchen table talk, and I like to keep it that way. And I think that's what's important for people to realize that the stuff that I'm saying, it's just common sense. I'm just trying to help people remember the reality of our situation and the reality of what it means to be human. And I think that's why it resonates with people so much, and that's why it's helped people so much, because it just helps them remember that they actually have value. Like I said, that's the big thing. People have lost value in themselves. A lot of people don't believe they have any value.
Mm.
Because we've had value taken from us through our lives. The value of the love that was supposed to develop between our parents, that was taken from us, because our parents were taken from us and replaced with television generally. And the parents thought they were doing the right thing. They were off
Yeah.
working, trying to do the right thing to get all the stuff that the kids needed. But what the kids actually needed was that bonding experience with their parents that they never got. And so they spend their life out there trying to get likes on Instagram and Snapchat and all this stuff, just trying to find some value in themselves, because that bond never developed. And they
Mm.
don't even know what they're searching for. They're searching for that meaning, that meaning of value in their lives. And that's all that we've got on Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff, and people wanting this attention. They just want the bond that should have been there with their parents that they never had. So we've had so much taken from us, we don't know what's been taken. I'm just attempting to help people remember these basic things about being human, because I think that is the key to defeating this system. This system is taking everything that it means to be human away from us. Even our interaction, it's all Instagram and Snapchat and texting each other and stuff
Mm.
these days, and not even using real words when we're texting. So it's removing all this stuff from us. It's removing every connection we have. It's creating a digital interface between us and the real world, and we need to break that down and get this human connection back again. But I think the first part of it is realizing what you are, realizing the beauty of yourselves, and realizing that you do actually have meaning and actually have value, and what you're searching for is this thing that's already there inside you, but you're searching for it externally. And it's a complicated issue. Whoever's put this system in place has a pretty good understanding of human psychology and how to corral us into what they want us to do and want us to be. But I'm just trying to help people remember this about themselves, this basic humanity about themselves. I think that's the key to the whole thing. Once you remember that, and you learn to love yourself, well, respect for others and love for others comes by default, and all the barriers with people break down once you can truly find yourself. So, that's what I've been attempting to do, just help people find themselves, really.
Well, you've been very successful in it, and you're doing such a beautiful job, and it's such a beautiful foundation that you're working from. I would really love to chat about your book on the website, Earth's Forbidden Secrets: Searching for the Past. But first, I guess I know I'm going to have a couple of questions about what are people being deceived about and why, and that's a whole series. But
Oh, look,
what people are going to say? What are we being deceived about, and why?
every,
Why?
everything,
And I know you
everything.
delve into this a lot on your website, but for people that are
I,
listening or watching, just
I put out a show recently, and I've called it. It was a year or so ago. I put out a show called "Everything Is a Lie." And it is. Everything is a lie. Everything's backwards. Everything. We've been deceived about everything. Everything. History is wrong. Everything is wrong. Everything they tell us is backwards. It's ridiculous. Everything. What a good rule of thumb for understanding reality is: go and listen to or read any government reports or hear government statements on anything, and realize that the truth lies in the opposite direction. That's the thing. I mean, they're lying to us about everything. I spoke on this week's radio show. I've done a lot of work with healing people of terminal illnesses such as cancer using cannabis oil. Cannabis oil heals cancer. It heals cancer. You can heal cancer in 3 months, terminal cancers, internal cancers in 3 months. You can heal skin cancer in 3 weeks using cannabis oil. And I've done it on myself and with other people.
Mhm.
And I was speaking on the show today, talking about how the government is searching for the cure for cancer. And what do you do when you cure something? What do you do when you cure fish? When you cure wood? When you cure leather? What do you do when you cure weed? When you cure wine? You make it into the best it can possibly be. You bring it to its most usable form. And they're looking for a cure for cancer. What are they doing with it? Curing cancer. They're making it more potent because cancer is actually very, very healable. You can heal cancer, not a problem, 3 weeks with cannabis oil. So even this sort of stuff, you think about how everything is backwards, a cure for cancer. Think about the word Aboriginal, the Aboriginal people here in Australia. What does normal mean? What does abnormal mean?
I've
What
heard
does
that.
original mean? What
They
does
don't make them.
Aboriginal mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Everything is backwards. Everything they tell you is wrong. Look at the figures for vaccines and look at the speech Bill Gates did, saying that the population figures are rising. With a good vaccination program, we can lower that figure. They're telling you what they're doing with all the stuff that they're doing. Everything is wrong, darling. Everything they tell you is wrong. History is so convoluted and so backwards to what we're told. Even Napoleon said history is a lie agreed upon, and that's the truth. If you really start looking at history, there's monuments all over the world which tell a completely different story to everything that we read in academic history books. The timeline that we're told is wrong. There's a recent book that came out by a Russian scholar called Anatoly Fomenko, called History, Science or Fiction. And it's a fantastic book. He starts looking at the fact that, see, according to science, about 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago, gravity changed. And this change in gravity accounted for all sorts of different things and all sorts of different stuff. And this one guy, Fomenko, started looking back through the timeline and saying, well, actually, if you factor in the reality that history is wrong and that they added 1,000 years to the timeline, you don't have to change gravity. And then we look at the Dark Ages. You've got the Dark Ages, 1,000 years where nothing seems to have happened, no recorded history at all. They inserted that. They just pushed everything back in time to make us think all these battles and all these wars happened thousands of years ago when they didn't. They happened hundreds of years ago. So, I mean, it's a huge question. But like I said, everything's a lie. Everything they tell you is wrong. Everything they tell you is backwards. This whole political system, all of it, it's theater. It's so much of it is just there to distract us, so we never really notice what's going on in the world, and we don't really notice what this earth is, and what our history has been and what we are. I think things are incredibly different to what we've been told. The problem is, people start making claims about all this sort of stuff. What I did in my book, in the first half of the book, I just tried to show you all the anomalies and show, look, there's all of this stuff lying all over the earth, which says that there's questions about our history.
It's
You
very
find one of these.
detailed.
Yeah, you find one of these artifacts and it raises questions. You find two of them, it's starting to get serious. But we find hundreds of them, hundreds and hundreds of these artifacts all over the earth that tell you history's wrong. So, it gets to the point where you realize that they can't have missed all this stuff. So they're covering up deliberately. So the question is why? Why don't they want us to know what our history is?
Why exactly?
Well, I would suggest that there's possibly things such as reoccurring cataclysms that happen. I think civilization is wiped out periodically. I think it's quite irregularly, and I think that then they repopulate the world and they just teach them a false history, and we go from there. Whether it's man-made cataclysms, whether it's some sort of technological thing that happens, whether it's simply sunspot activity, we don't know. We're still trying to figure it out. But there appears to be that the civilizations are recycled and just built on top of civilizations, on top of civilizations. It doesn't matter where you go. You can go to Melbourne, go to Sydney, go to Europe, go to the United States. Start digging down and you'll find that there's buildings below ground. There's roads below ground, there's fences. And some of the buildings that we've seen in Europe, massive amounts of buildings below ground, and in Melbourne and Sydney. So, something's happened that is there's somehow civilizations are covered up and we simply build new ones on top. and we teach a new history to the next generation. If you start looking at things such as looking into foundlings and orphan trains and stuff like this, you find about 1880 the world was repopulated with children. They sent hundreds and hundreds of children out all around the world, 200,000 children across America from east to west in 1 year, 100,000 children sent out to Australia in a year, out to Africa, out to New Zealand, 935,000 children trafficked around Europe in 1 year. And they were finding children everywhere, just foundlings, they called them. Where'd they all come from? Why suddenly was there some sort of a cataclysm, and then there were children everywhere, and the children were collected, put into foundling homes, sent out as workers as to repopulate the world? Why did all this happen, and why isn't any of it in our history books? But if you look at it, you can find records of it. You'll find a paper trail which indicates all this happened. But we're not taught any of it. We're taught that the settlers came out here. The convicts were sent out to Australia in 1778, 1776, came out here and they populated the country. Go look at buildings around Sydney 1820 and realise that this is 40, 50 years after the convicts arrived. Some of these buildings, these were built by convicts. This incredibly complex European style architecture in Australia in early 1800s. 30 or 40 years after the convicts came here. Were they incredible stonemasons? They had this incredible machinery. Were they able to go and dig all these quarries and quarry all these stones? And
the sandstone's amazing. Some of the blocks, I have seen them.
Yeah, I mean, none of this makes sense. So what does make sense is the fact that there was a previous civilization here and we don't know about it. It's been expunged from our history books, and this current civilization was simply built on top. And when you look at it, like the amount of population on Earth, we're told there's 7 billion people or 8 billion people on Earth. I mean, I even question that figure, whether it's true. You drive out, fly over America, fly across Australia, just have a look at the amount of vacant land. The place is unpopulated. The Earth is virtually unpopulated. It doesn't matter where you go. There's so much empty land. The people are packed into cities and we think it's overpopulated, but it's not. Go look at some of the forests on the Earth and ask why none of the forests are over 200 years old, except for little pockets of trees, like the giant sequoias in Canada, the redwoods in Oregon, the United States. We've got little sections here in Australia where there's very old trees, but most of them are catalogued, and you've got to ask who even did that. And the Amazon, why is the Amazon? This is all regrowth. These aren't giant trees that you would expect. If this was virgin forest from back when the Earth was formed, we've never gone in there, the untouched Amazon, so much to discover in there, we're told. The trees are only 200 years old. So what's going on here? What's really happening on this Earth, and why is nothing, what it should be? Why are all these ruins existing all beneath the oceans all over the Earth? There's ruins everywhere. Ruins in the Mediterranean, ruins off the coast of Japan, off Bimini, off the coast of America, off Indonesia, everywhere. Ruins all over the place. And not just a few ruins, ruins everywhere. People are asking, where was Atlantis? Well, Atlantis was everywhere. Atlantis wasn't, a place. Well, maybe it was a place, maybe it was a city.
That was one of my questions.
Well, it seems to have been more like a worldwide culture. Perhaps Atlantis was the capital of it. But there appears to have been a worldwide culture that existed not too long ago, as recently as a few hundred years ago, that has been expunged.
A few hundred? Wow, okay.
Only a few hundred, yeah. Like, if you look at maps from the 1500s and 1600s, there's an area in Europe called Tartaria, which takes up most of Europe, takes up all of Russia, Mongolia, all of India, all of Eastern Europe. This is all Tartaria. And then you got over on the very corner over on the left, you've got Europa, which is most of what we know of Europe now. And when you look at the maps, it also seems to include areas of the Philippines, areas of the United States, all seem to have been part of Tartaria. And we don't hear about this place. We've never heard it. It's not in our history books, but it's there on all the maps. They say it was just a place. It was just an area where a whole bunch of nomads lived, and in Mongolia, all this stuff. This was all part of Tartaria. It was just a place, it wasn't a country. Well, if you look at flag books from the 1700s, you'll find they had a flag. So if it wasn't a country, why did it have a flag? It had a maritime flag, and it had a national flag as well, two different flags, one for the Navy and one for for land. So, it was a well-established country, and it had well-established architecture, which we're finding all over the world. And even this European-style architecture, such as the Queen Victoria building in Sydney, amazing architecture with the big copper domes and stuff
Yeah.
on top. Was this built by convicts in 1820? Seriously, I mean, why are we finding buildings like this all around the world in this, what we're told is a Greco-Roman style? You can even find buildings like that in Japan that were in Japan before Japan opened its borders to Europe and allowed the Europeans in. This is European style architecture in Japan. So this was part of the same culture. Go to the Philippines, you'll find the same architecture there. The big Roman style government buildings you've got, the pillars out the front, the gargoyles. Why are these in all countries? Why are they in America? Why are they in England, all across Europe, here in Australia, Philippines? They're in Cuba, they're in everywhere. Why? Why would all these countries suddenly build the same architecture, exactly the same, and these copper domes and all these things? Why? Why are they all the same in every country that you go to if it wasn't a common culture? That's the thing, and more work that we've done is there was a man called Attila Flenk, who was a Hungarian man who's a linguist. This was his hobby. He did a lot of translations, and he spent a lot of time in the Macquarie Library in Sydney looking through the diaries of the settlers when they came out, and the soldiers that came out. And he found out that the Australian Aboriginals, the language that most of the Aboriginals were speaking, had its roots in Magyar, which is Hungarian. And so what were the Australian Aboriginals doing speaking
Wow.
Hungarian? And why were the Incas also had their roots language in Hungarian, and the Polynesians and the Melanesians? So there appears that there was a worldwide language, which was Magyar, which was also right around the world as well. And the Tasmanian Aboriginals were speaking Magyar, and apparently the Tasmanian Aboriginals were also mainly singing to each other. I mean, it was a language which appears to have been something a cross between Magyar and Sanskrit, and it was mainly singing, which would make it understandable why they devastated the Tasmanian Aboriginals so completely. And this is why they devastated so many of these cultures, because they wanted to wipe out the language. They didn't want people to know there was a root language, because a root language indicates that there was a worldwide civilization. And we can find all the evidence of this. You'll find there's traces of little sections of words in Polynesian and Melanesian and in Aboriginal. If you can find any elders, it's very, very difficult to find any Aboriginal elders now. That you'll find that there's traces of Magyar in the Aboriginal language. So it's very, very telling, very revealing. And when you look at the work of people such as Anatoly Fomenko, and he's established that there has been at least 1,000 years added to the historic timeline, everything's been pushed back in time, everything really starts to begin to make a lot of sense. If history's a lie, history's been fabricated. If there was a worldwide civilization that existed as recently as possibly like 1600s, possibly the last traces of it may have even been wiped out as early as the early 1800s. This is very significant, and it shows that it's only been a couple of hundred years to get us to this point. So how easy might it be to get us back to that point, back to what we were? The problem is we've lost our languages, and we've lost so much of our history. And stealing someone's language is a terrible thing to do, because when you steal someone's language, you've taken from them information they can never ever get back. Like in Hungarian, there's 48 letters in the Hungarian alphabet. In languages that are stemming from Magyar, such as Finnish and Hungarian, there's like 50 different ways to say snow, because there's 50 different types of snow. You can express every single nuance of human emotion in these languages. We can't do that in English. So, you've got to question just how much has been taken from us,
Wow, it's a lot to digest, and I'm blown away, but I love that you are questioning everything, and I think that's what we should all do. I do it in lesser so amount, but I certainly don't disagree with anything that you're saying, and I love that you're questioning. I mean, it reminds me the other day, I mean, I'm not immunized myself, and I said to a girl that works for me who was having her child immunized, and I said, have you looked at, I mean, this is a very, very basic example, but I said, have you looked at the effects of immunization? She said, no, I just did what the doctor told me. And this is a very sort of man that lives in the shed sort of, basic fundamental question, but we often don't question everything around us. What you're talking about sounds incredible, like a science fiction novel, but it is quite plausible.
Well, that's the thing, and the thing is that the evidence is there to support it. Um, none of the monuments, everything that we're told is a great mystery. If you factor in the reality that history is wrong, well, it's not so much of a mystery at all, and like I said, you find one of these things and it's just an anomaly, but you find hundreds of them. It's no longer an anomaly. There's something wrong. Something is definitely wrong. So why aren't they looking at it? Why aren't they questioning this sort of stuff? And if we don't understand our history, then as said by Marcus Garvey, a man with no history is like a tree with no roots. If we don't understand where we came from and how we got to this point, how can we ever heal the human condition? And if our history is different, if it's been stolen from us and fabricated, and a lot of the wars that we've fought, a lot of the wars that we're still fighting, appear to be all about depopulation and destroying infrastructure. Destroying Libya, destroying Yemen, the way they're doing. You look at World War II even, they bombed Berlin to rubble. They bombed Dresden to rubble. They bombed London to rubble. You look at the fires through the United States, the Great Fire of San Francisco, Great Fire of Los Angeles. You look at all the major cities in the United States that appear to have experienced a great fire at some stage. They're burning all the infrastructure out. They're burning all of our history out of existence and wiping all of our history out of existence under the guise of all these wars that they're having. And the wars are all fabricated. The world's been a war since I was born, and with no healing to it at all. What is the reason for it all? Why are we fighting all these wars? Who are we defending ourselves against? And why, when we go to war with these countries, do we just bomb all the buildings to rubble and destroy all the cities and destroy all the infrastructure? It's like we're wiping out the past and we're wiping out any trace of history. And that's what a lot of this has been about. And if you really look at the world, you can view it as each country is kind of like a department store, and each government is kind of the managers of that department store, but they all work together as one worldwide criminal cabal. And they're all working together, facing off against each other, manufacturing all these wars with each other. But they never get hurt. They never get in trouble with each other. Two countries, the leaders agree to go to war. They bomb the shit out of all the people, but nothing ever happens to the leaders. They shake hands at the end of the day. It's, we're not at war now, and you can all go rebuild your countries. It's a scam. The whole thing is a scam. And they keep us so busy, running on the treadmill, working these jobs, doing all these things that we think we have to do, which aren't important at all, and worried about all this political theatre, worried about all these wars, worried about global warming, worried about this, worried about that. So we're not really looking at what's going on around us. We're not ever asking why. Why is the world in this state? Why are we doing the things we're doing? Why are they spraying in the skies and doing all this stuff? We never have time to ask any of these questions. So a lot of it, I think, is all done just to keep us distracted, so we don't notice what's going on around us. We don't notice the fact that the human race is built to a certain point, and then there are these events that happen, whether, like I said, cyclic cataclysms, whether it's man-made, whether it's technology, whether it's sunspot activity, what it is, whatever happens. A lot of it is all there to distract us, darling. I really think it is. And the problem is we're not free enough to know what's going on. So, I mean, a lot of the stuff that I do and a lot of the stuff that I point out is I'm just trying to encourage people to ask these questions and to perhaps work to establish the freedom we need to get ourselves out of this downward spiral that we're in. Because we're in a pretty downward spiral. What they're doing, what the government's doing, rolling out this smart grid and all this stuff they're doing, it's pretty much the end game. So, I think it's important, Darl. I think it's really important that people look at this. I think it's important that people do get involved and do ask the questions and realize the value of themselves and what they could achieve simply by asking these questions and not tolerating wrong behavior. Does any of this make sense?
Yes, it does. It does. It really, really does. I'm just trying to digest everything you're saying. My question is who, and I'm sure you ask this all the time, but who are they?
That's the question, isn't it? Who are they? Well, the ruling cartels who run the money system are definitely part of it. The thing is, um, there are going to be people who will say it's the bankers, it's the Jesuits, it's the Jews, it's reptiles, it's aliens, it's whatever. The thing is, with this culture, all the information has been put out there for me to prove it's anybody you want to believe it is.
Okay.
That's the thing. I can prove it's anybody you want to believe.
Right.
That doesn't make it true. The issue is that we're not free enough to know who they are. We're not free enough to know what the real truth is. And like I said, I can prove it is anybody you want to believe. That's the problem, it seems like it's not even human. Like whatever's going on here, it doesn't seem like it's human because it's so complex. But maybe it is. Maybe it's just us. Maybe it's what happens when we put this mental state into motion. I've gone through. I put a show out a couple of years ago called "Giving Life to Lucifer." What happens when we get on the downward spiral of looking for knowledge, and we start creating an automated system with the internet and all this sort of stuff, and the IoT, how it all leads to what it leads to, simply out of our own greed. So I mean, it could be us, but it's almost too complex because when you factor in the recycling cataclysms and all sorts of stuff, and the fact, I mean, even the technology we've got now, I would suggest this isn't even new technology; it's just filtered out to us. Like if there was a cataclysm, let's say there was an event, and most of the population was wiped out in the next 10 years or something. Most of this civilization was covered in mud or whatever, and new ones, cities were built on top, and some of the buildings would still be usable. Blah blah blah. You repopulate the world with children. You teach them whatever history you want, and you tell them that we've just had an industrial revolution, and then over the next 200 years, everything sort of gradually comes back online. The technology gets filtered out to them, and then it happens again. And then again, you tell them that there was just had an industrial revolution. But who they are, we don't have the freedom to know who they are. I can prove it's anybody you want, like I said. What we need to do is establish the freedom we need to find out what's actually going on and to find out what the truth is. And that's what I've said as well. Even the so-called truth movement, it shouldn't even be called the truth movement, because what it is a whole bunch of people arguing over their belief systems, arguing who they think they are. It's this, it's that, it's the Jesuits, it's the Jews, it's the reptiles, it's this, it's that. And they get fixated on it and they argue about it. And then we don't get anywhere because everyone's just running around like chickens with their heads cut off, fighting about it. It's like what happened with 9/11. And when 9/11 happened, and we knew it wasn't Osama bin Laden and 19 hijackers. We just know that's not what it wasn't. That's not possible. But then people started saying, "Oh, well,
but I have to interrupt and say 99% of the population. Sorry, I have to interrupt and say 99% of the population still believe it was bin Laden.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'd say they don't. The media might tell you they do, but I'd say they don't.
Okay.
Maybe a majority does, but that's because they weren't there when it happened. A lot of the kids are growing up now. This happened before they were born. So, but what we know is that the official story is wrong. But what they did was people saying, "Oh, well, how did the buildings come down? Oh, it was thermite. It was micro nukes. It was directed energy weapons. It was this. It was that." And then they started arguing about the details rather than just look. What we know is that the official story is wrong. That needs to be the focus. And it's the same with this. What we know is that we're not free. We know that we're not free. This is a slavery system. We're kept in this system of economic slavery where we're all at each other's throats trying to get the 1% of stuff that's left over to us when 1% of the population have the other 99%. That's what we know. So, arguing over who they are and having this so-called truth movement, because the truth is pretty subjective depending on what people want to believe. I mean, sure, there's an ultimate truth, but what is it? I mean, do you know? Does anybody know? We don't, because we're not free enough to know. But people aren't prepared to admit that. Their ego kicks in. Their ego gets in the way. No one wants to be wrong. Everyone wants to think, "Oh, I know what's going on. I know it all. I'm good." And if you point out to them, actually, you might be wrong with that, they take it as an affront against their ego. You get into an argument because everyone's making these claims of this is and this is what I believe. So it shouldn't even be called the truth movement. It should be the freedom movement. It should be the freedom to find out what the truth is movement, if you're going to put truth in there at all, you know. So, I mean, that's what I look at. I just see, this whole system is a fiction. It's just the concept of authority that exists in people's minds, and the whole system exists and is able to exist and perpetuate because we are prepared to step outside our moral compass to abide by laws and rules which don't serve us. If we stop doing that, if we refuse to comply with wrong behavior and we refuse to abide by any rule that causes us to step outside our moral compass, the system couldn't function. That we could change the world in a day if people just adopted that perspective. So to me, that needs to be the focus. Once you do that, you'll find out who they are because they will scream the loudest, you know. But, we hold this whole system up, Diane, and we do it because we don't respect ourselves enough or know ourselves enough to respect the people around us. We judge them by what they believe, what their particular truth is. May not agree with our particular truth, and we don't even know how true any of it is to begin with. So,
Look,
that's the thing. No
I
one's
just,
prepared to admit that, though.
yeah, I love your message. You've given me a bit of, I consider myself very open and out there, but you've given me a bit of a shaken up and a waken up. And I think anyone that's listening, just to stop and think, well, don't just believe everything you hear or you read or you watch. Question.
Yeah, ask the questions. I mean, that's the thing, ask questions and realize that all we're dealing with here is people, even if there is some mystical force at the top. What we've got at the surface here is people, even those in our governments and stuff, it's just people, and we don't ask the questions. We need to ask questions rather than just saying yes or no, sir, three bags full, sir, and rolling over on command. We need to ask questions, and stop complying with wrong behavior. I just don't comply with any of it. I live outside the system. I pretty well have most of my life. I don't vote. I've never filled out a tax form. I've never voted. I've never done any of that stuff. Maybe they'll come for me one day, but I don't know. I just don't do it.
Good on you.
They contact me sometimes. I'll say, we believe there's someone here that isn't registered to vote. I go, yeah, that's me. And they go, well, what's your excuse? And I go, I refuse to support organised crime. And they don't know what to say. And they walk away because they don't know how to deal with it, But that's always my standard answer to them. I don't participate in the system or support the government because I refuse to support organised crime. I refuse to support racketeering, That's my view on it. If you want to have a public debate about it, I'm sure I'm happy to come and do it, but I don't think you want me to.
You are.
So they kind of leave me alone, I think, But, I just encourage people to be all they can and to help people around them, because I think that is the difference. I mean, I have a saying that if you throw yourself to the wind, you can ride it. And I give all that I can to people, and I find that the universe gives back to me. I don't want for anything. Life just works. And I think that's a lot of what we've lost. I really do. People place too much of an economic value on everything they do. Time is money, all that sort of stuff. Even that book I wrote, I put it up there for free. I don't have a monetized account on my YouTube account. I don't have anything subscriber section on my website. I have nothing monetized at all. I just totally believe in spirit and in the power of the universe, in the power of my heart. And I know that if I give unconditionally, and I serve creation will put me where I'm supposed to be. And you can ride the wind if you simply throw yourself to it. And I've been doing it for years. And, I mean, I just try to lead by example and hopefully help people see a better way. And like I said, I only do this because I think it needs to be done. I think someone needs to be saying this to people. Someone needs to, kind of slap people into wakefulness in a kind and gentle way.
And you're doing it in a beautiful way. It
Well,
reminds
but
me
it
of
needs to
that.
be done.
Yeah, you remind me of that. The Socrates quote, "The unexamined life is not worth living," which I'm sure you've heard.
Well, how true that is. How true that is, But yeah, I mean, I think we have so much potential as humankind. We have so much potential to be anything we want to be. We have so much. I think the only thing that's impossible is that which you believe is impossible. You know, the power of the human mind is an incredible thing. You know, we're constrained by our belief systems. You know, we want to know who they are. We want someone to point the finger at. You know, it's even with this whole movement. You know, people sit there and they get all the information. Well, what for? What are you doing with it? Are you applying it to your life? You know, how much information do you need before you realize the world's run by criminals, and you don't have to comply with any of this? You know, and even when you look at the concept of the exposing or the externalization of the hierarchy, you know, why the truth movement's even here? Why they let us do what we do? Why do they want people to know? I mean, they obviously want people to know how corrupt the system is. Why? Because once people know how corrupt the system is, and they comply with it anyway, they condemn their own souls. They become willing participants in the evil that's being participated by this system, by their compliance to it. Compliance to it out of fear for themselves, fear of death, fear of the only thing in life that is inevitable, which is death. That's what you came here to do, is to die. And what if it's how you die? What if it's the emotional state that you're in when you die? What if it's about how much are you prepared to take until you're going to allow that thing, which is going to happen anyway, to get in the way of your moral compass? You know, I mean, and what if this is just an exam? What if this is the exam that happens before the real event, where you determine, where you grow your soul to determine what you're really made of, what you're really worth? You know, if you're going to go through life in fear of the one thing that is inevitable, and you're going to allow all this evil to perpetuate around you out of fear of ever facing that which is inevitable, which you're going to face anyway, you know, what's it all for? What if that's why evil exists, so that you have a choice as to whether you want to comply with it or not, and whether you're going to let death get in the way, or fear of death get in the way of evil? Go and hurt them, do all that bad stuff to them, just don't hurt me. I won't look, I'm good, I'm going to be fine. Well, you're going to get old and you're going to die. And all that, you could have ended that right then. You could have ended that evil, but you were scared of death, so you didn't. Now you're at the end of your life, you're going to die anyway. You missed the opportunity to actually stand for something. You know, so I kind of look at it that way as well. You know, I have no fear of death, none at all, none whatsoever. So, and I think it's about what you do with the information that comes to you, what you do with every moment that comes to you. It all goes away, you know, but we have to make that choice. So just maybe helping people maybe consider that perspective, perhaps, you know, might help things. I don't know.
Yeah, you're getting people to examine their life. It's quite remarkable. Coming from such a great foundation of care, and as all the aspects that we talked about, that I think you changed so many people and got them to question. I mean, the intention behind your website and everything is really changing people and making them wake up, and it's quite a beautiful
I hope
thing.
so. I hope so. I do get a lot of really, really wonderful emails from people, but I mean, it does get very difficult. I get so much trolling, I get so much hate mail, and so much.
Really?
Oh yeah, I get so many attacks from people, and just to wear you down, I think, you know, because I don't go with the general consensus all the time. I found that in the so-called truth.
Oh, really? I didn't get
Well,
that.
I found that in the so-called truth movement, even there's always an officially accepted narrative, and I often don't, you know, go with that narrative, and so I'm a bit of a wild card for a lot of people.
It's amazing.
And,
I love it.
well, yeah, I mean, but it does ruffle a lot of feathers, you know,
Yeah, fair
and
enough.
so, you know, I do get a lot of trolling. It does wear you down after a while. And I get attacks. I get death threats. I get my computer got hacked not long ago, and all my stuff got deleted. So it does
Sorry about that.
it does sort of get to you a little bit. So you can't have too much of a stake in the outcome of any of it. But yeah, I mean, it is nice, and thank you so much for saying that it has been helping and changing people. I mean, it's nice to know that it does provide something positive in people's lives. And I've got a big concern about that as well, because some of the information I present is quite confronting. And that's why with the radio shows, when I'm presenting kind of confronting information, I try to bring it around at the end of the show and turn it into something empowering so that people are empowered by the information. But I'm a firm believer that they need the information, because we have some serious problems, and we could heal the problems, but people have to be aware of these problems first before we're ever going to heal them. If people are afraid to acknowledge the problems, then they're never going to be healed. And what it is really is, it's a failure of people. It's an inability of some people to be able to process certain forms of light, because all information is light, all knowledge is light, even if it is knowledge or information which you may perceive to be negative. It's simply light. It's simply a form of light, and enlightenment is a destructive and uncomfortable process. Now, people who step onto this path and want enlightenment, they're not aware of what enlightenment is. They think it's you're going to get to this point where all their chakras are opening and they're sitting in
Yeah.
robes on the mountain and their third eye is glowing and they're all seeing and all knowing. You know, light is information, and enlightenment is a tearing away of the veil and seeing the world for what it really is. And it's a very destructive process, because it's a breaking down of everything you ever believed to be true. Like I said, everything is backwards, everything is wrong, everything is a lie. You know, we have an education system which is designed to indoctrinate and to not educate. We have a health system which is designed to promote sickness and control health, make sure people don't have any. You know, we have, everything is backwards. Everything that they give us is backwards. And this is very, very confronting for a lot of people. So even people who step onto this path of enlightenment step onto it for all the wrong reasons. They step onto it for selfish reasons, because they think they're going to get to be a point where they're a guru and they can charge people $300 a head to come and listen to them read poems, you know. So, it's not what it's about. It's not what it's about at all. You know, it's seeing the world for what it really is, and realizing the energy you have and the power you have within you to stand against that by simply saying no, and simply realizing that all you're dealing with is people. You don't have to be afraid of any of these people. You can simply stand in your power and say things for what they are. And if people do that, we will change the world. You know, and that's what I do. I just say things for what they are. It's like I said, why I keep it very, very simple. You know, around the kitchen table talk and all that sort of stuff. And I think it is very confrontational to a lot of people. It does challenge their belief systems, which is why I get so many death threats and hate mail and trolling and all sorts of stuff, because it's uncomfortable for people to realize that the evil exists because they allow it. You know, we all do. We allow it. You know, this whole smart system is coming online because we're complying with it. We're using all this technology. We're shopping digitally. We're using, and even with all the technology, you can still use your smartphone, use all the apps, use all the social media stuff. Just don't shop with digital currency. Don't shop
Yeah.
with credit cards. Don't
Or the
don't
Apple
allow
Pay and yeah.
yeah, don't allow economics to get in the way of what you're doing with the technology. Don't allow the technology to create a barrier between you and your everyday activities of buying food and all that sort of stuff. Because if you do that and it all goes cashless, then they got you. That's the thing. And that's all happening because we're simply complying with it. So it's a little choices people make in their everyday lives which can make a difference. So I'm just trying to encourage that in people as well.
Well, for a simple man in a shed, you're spreading a pretty incredible message.
Well, thank you, darling. And so are you. So are you.
Thank you. I guess as we come to a close, is there any other messages you'd like to pass on to the audience? Although you've
No,
covered everything, but
I think we've pretty well covered it. Like, love yourself, folks. Don't doubt yourself. The trick to getting through reality is to have no stake in the outcome. Because why would you have a stake in it? You're only here for a breath. You're only here for a very, very little while. You know, all the stuff that you think you need and this big pile of stuff you're building to climb to the top of and sit on it, you get there and you get up to the top and you go, wow, there's nothing here. You know, I missed out on my whole life because I was collecting all this stuff. Really, you don't need any of it. The trick to it is to, like I said, have no stake in the outcome. Just let it all unfold. Throw yourself to the wind and take every moment as it arises. The trick to getting through life is to be able to face infinity without flinching. That's how to do it. You know, people say, how do I do what I do? Well, that's how to do it. You know, a few years ago, I crawled in through the tunnels into Gaza Strip. I ran around Gaza Strip for 10 days. We didn't tell Hamas we were coming or anything. Ran around there with a video camera for 10 days. We got detained by Hamas in the end when we were trying to leave, all sorts of stuff. Got interrogated for 4 or 5 hours. I found the whole thing fascinating while it was happening. And I'm crawling through the tunnel underground. I'm 50 meters underground. And there was one point where I thought, wow, if Israel drops a bomb on Rafah border, this tunnel could come down. I'll be buried 15 meters below the ground. And this is tiny little dirt tunnel with nothing holding it up, no shoring, no sides, nothing.
God.
And I started to giggle. I thought, what a place to be. What a place to put myself in. And I thought, if I was to die here right now, wow, it'd be totally worth it just to be here. I mean, what's the chances of me ever being here? So it's that sort of an attitude to be able to face that sort of stuff without flinching and just throw yourself to the wind and ride it. That's the trick to life. You know, if we do that, you know, we lose a stake in the outcome. All this system becomes laughable. It becomes a joke. The politicians become like clowns, really. I look at this system and it doesn't scare me. They don't scare me. But I feel a terrible remorse for the direction the human race is being led into. People are being led like lambs to the slaughter. And, you know, I can see a far better way for them. So I'm just trying to encourage that in them. And thank you for having me on. And if anybody wants to know anything about me, they can go to my website, which is called thecrowhouse.com, and find out all about me there. And yeah, thank you, Don. I mean, I don't know what else to say, but
that was amazing. And you've already answered my question. If people are looking to find their passion or follow their passion, you've answered that. I will put all your details in the show notes for anyone to connect with. It's been a pleasure, Max. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Don. Thank you for having me on, and we'll do it again sometime. And send me a link when you get it posted, and I'll share for you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.